Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are around Australia, and welcome to the Accountants Connection webinar series brought to you by Your Business First. We've got a fantastic topic today for everybody on the line into how to create brave marketing for your practice. So, for those who don't know me and don't know anything about Your Business First, my name is Darren Xerri. I'm the CEO and Principal Consultant of Your Business First, and I commenced in the profession back in 1996, mainly more with practice management and general management services with suburban multidisciplinary firms. Fast forward 19, 20 years later, I created Your Business First, providing CFO consulting and concierge services, not only to the accounting profession, but to their clients as well. So as far as this is concerned, I'm a presenter of the Accountants Connection webinar series, where we hold regular webinars in relation to topics specific to the accounting profession. But more importantly, and such as an example today, where we have guest speakers who work with the accounting profession, and they talk about the product or service that they provide and how they can help the accountant or the profession. I'm also the author of the So You Want To series of ebooks in relation to how to implement a couple of strategies in your accounting practice. And we also facilitate workshops on behalf of the accounting firms. Through Your Business First, I'm a registered speaker with the IPA and CPA discussion groups here in Victoria. And I'm also the regional director with the Alpha Group. As I mentioned before, we also work with not only the accounting firms, but their clients. So through the Alpha Group, we created peer-to-peer mentoring and mastermind services on behalf of the clients of those accounting firms. And lastly, through USP Australia, I'm the regional partner here, meaning that we provide digital platform of education and knowledge to firms regarding in relation to practice management, marketing, team, operations, workflow, etc. So before we get started, what I like to do is just some housekeeping rules. I just let some more people in. So as far as today, we'll have William and Grant presenting, and we'll be talking about their topic. But if you've got any questions or comments you'd like to add in relation to what we're going through today, please feel free to use the chat box, and we'll endeavour to get through to those questions. But if we don't, please be rest assured we'll answer those questions after the webinar if we don't have time. So today, how to create brave marketing for your practice. What I like to do is just give a brief introduction of Will and Grant. So first of all, with Will. So Will has worked across all areas of marketing, but in recent years has focused on helping businesses with their overall growth and marketing strategy. He also helps a number of clients with copywriting, so their ads, emails, websites become more effective at getting new clients. His greatest skill is asking the right questions to help his clients get crystal clear on what they need to do, and even more importantly, what they don't need to do. And I suppose Will's claim to fame is that one day a colleague once described him as a human profit detector, because he can look at any business and find untapped growth opportunities in as little as 30 minutes. And also today, speaking with Will, is Grant. Grant is an accomplished businessman who has been a digital and ad agent owner for many years. He's known and regarded as a head fire starter in this industry around the world, always having a creative drive, passion, enthusiasm for growth of his clients' businesses. Grant is an experienced creative managing director for his international clients, getting to know and understand their needs for the tomorrow market. Grant helps business owners understand the digital language required to effectively convey messages to the market using current and new platforms as well. But Grant does say that branding is a science and positioning. That is the true value of what a business is worth in today's market. So thanks very much, guys. And Will, I'll probably start with you, mate. So how do accountants become brave with their marketing?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And bravery requires a mental commitment first and foremost. So the will to do something different and stand out from the competition. And of course, it's only when you do so that you can actually attract the best clients or the clients that you really want. And can I just check, it looks as though the title's missing on that slide. Do people see the title, the text on that slide, or just the picture?
Just the picture.
Just the picture,
Just the
mate.
picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Not sure what happened there. But yeah, basically all we're talking about is to potential clients, and this applies to almost every industry. Accounting's no different. Everyone looks the same. Everyone does the same stuff. So no one has any idea who to choose and why. But when you dig into it, into what you do, the relationships you have with your clients, there's some really good stuff in there that's valuable and would give them terrific reasons to choose you. So it's about identifying those strengths and then playing them up from a marketing perspective. There goes the title. I'm not sure what happened there. All right. So basically, what Brave marketing is it's designed to attract the clients you want. You don't have to take everyone as a client. And we've all had clients that we'd rather not have. We may still have some that we'd rather not have. I always say to people, if you're going to be marketing, market for the clients that you really want, and build it to a point where you can be selective about who you take on. Sometimes one of the bravest marketing decisions you can make is to sack your bad clients, because they sap your time and energy, and sometimes they're unprofitable. So it's marketing that stands out from everyone else. So an example of, we help you with your tax, or we do your tax return. Well, everyone will say that it doesn't stand out. The alternative is something specific that would stand out. And we'll look at ideas for that along the way. And the bravest of all marketing may actually make your competition think that you're nuts, that you've lost the plot. How are they doing that? Why are they doing that? I don't understand. How could it possibly work? It's almost the opposite of the industry. It's almost, the unaccountant marketing approach within your industry. And everyone else goes, they must be nuts. But what happens is once you understand Brave marketing and you understand your numbers behind it, you're actually cleaning up and you're getting the best clients. So a few types of Brave marketing, there's a number of different ones. The most powerful is that you've got a unique mechanism in what you do. And a unique mechanism is something that you do differently to everyone else. It could be that you've got a 97-point checklist that you go through to ensure every client pays the least amount of tax they could possibly pay. It could be you've got a super fast process for setting up a company. It could be that you describe yourself as the ATO hitman. And that is basically you just understand them so well. No one understands them, better than you do. Another brave strategy can be to make a prediction. We see this in the media, particularly around New Year. Every year, people make predictions about the trends, what they think is going to happen. So bold predictions can be powerful. I recall many years ago, Kerry Parker was on Current Affair or something like that, and he was interviewed, and he said something along the lines of anyone who's paying more tax than they should's a mug. That was a pretty bold statement. But there's no reason why you couldn't make a similar statement for your accounting practice, provided you can back it up, obviously. So predictions can be incredibly powerful. One that's current right now is people are talking about the financial cliff, that people are going to fall off when the JobKeeper thing ends or changes at the end of this month. So that's a prediction, and there's a lot of media coverage around that. That's a powerful strategy. Telling the stories of your clients' successes is always really powerful. And another one that engages people a lot is a challenge. So some sort of a challenge. So you may be a phone call away from paying less tax. There are some examples. Scroll down. So there is a formula to creating brave marketing, and it's basically in 5 parts. The first part is to dig. So this is to gather all of the information that you need. So in the case of the accounting industry, we'd be looking at what do people say in their Google ads? What do they say on their websites? What do they say in other advertising that they might run? Everything to do with the industry. We'd look at the changes in the industry, changes to tax regulations and everything. We almost want to just dive right into all of that information almost to the point where we're overwhelmed with it. So that's step one. Step 2 is to then digest that information and play around with it from a marketing perspective. So we might see something that someone is doing, or we might even go and look at, accountants overseas or something and see someone in America doing something interesting. And we might play around with that and see how that would relate to what we're doing. So we're just sort of moving pieces around a bit like you see in the puzzle here. And essentially what we're trying to do is just to digest and have an initial bit of a play with the information that we've gathered. The next step is to actually walk away from it altogether. So we've gathered all the information, we've played around with it a bit. We're not going to come up with a big idea or a brave marketing idea by continuing to think about it. What happens is our subconscious mind needs to start working on it. And the only way that happens is when we go and do something else. Often people have had a brainwave when they're having a shower, or they're going for a walk, or they're driving in the car and a brainwave hits you. And that's the purpose of getting distance involved. We stop thinking about it, but our subconscious mind is actually working on it the whole time. Oops, gone through one too many. The next step is to discover. So we're going to get little flashes or insights or inspiration. Things are going to pop into our brain. We don't know when and where, so we need to be ready for them. And we need to write them down as we uncover them. So we're just getting all of the ideas basically down on paper at this point. I'm just going to pause for a minute. I saw the chat popped up. Was there a question or issue that someone had at this point that they wanted to raise?
No, but just people's just saying hi. So
okay,
yeah.
That's fine. All good. So we're discovering, we're writing down the ideas. We don't judge them at this stage. Judgment is the killing, the number one thing that'll kill off a brave marketing idea. So many good marketing ideas never see the light of day because they get killed off. The wife of the owner or something, or the partner of the owner, or their business partner, or they tell someone about and they go, no, that's a stupid idea, and it gets killed off. So we don't want to kill these ideas. We just want to allow them to come through and note them down. The next step is to deliver, because ideas, in a sense, they're not a dime a dozen, as the expression goes, but ideas, if you run through this process, you will get a ton of ideas. We've all had ideas. Ideas will come to you, but you ultimately have to deliver them in the real world. So the fifth part of the process is actually, okay, how do I make this happen? For example, if you decide to make a bold claim or offer a bold guarantee around your service, what are the logistics around that? Who would I offer it to? What would be the requirement for triggering the guarantee? What is my guarantee going to be? So there's always a need to actually deliver the idea. I'm just going to pause and see if there are any questions on that 5-part process. Pop them in the chat. We will have questions at the end, but if there's anything at this stage, more than happy to answer it. Darren, I'll get you just to monitor the chat if something comes up, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
So let me interject with you there just quickly on the delivery side of things. Hi, everyone. My name's Thom. So basically, this delivery part is the most crucial part of the whole process, because very much of identifying who is your customer, or who would you prefer to be your customer, is to understand exactly where they are. And once you understand where they are, then of course this delivery of how to reach them, it becomes very important. And all those, the 5 Ds that William has mentioned, become very, very important in the sense of backtracking. So for example, if we were planning a trip somewhere and we chose a destination, we would know what the destination is, and then we'll work out where we are, and then we would work out our logistics on how to get there. It's sort of the kind of very basic level of strategy that I would follow, in the sense of understanding who's the market, how do they receive the information, and how can I deliver those type of things. When it comes to thinking of an idea to position yourself, it's about putting yourself into uncomfortable scenarios. And I can give you a few examples of where I've really messed up in the past. And just for what you know today and what you understand today is not necessarily how it's going to be tomorrow. So my 3 examples where I really messed up in life was back in the early or late 80s. Someone told me about bottled water. And I couldn't understand the need of bottled water when there was just a tap that I could just go and fill a glass of water. And yet today, bottled water far outsells all the flavored drinks put together. And therefore, it was just something that I just could not fathom. I could not understand. I could not realize. And yet someone had worked out that, hey, we're just going to bottle water and we're going to sell it. And so they did. A second area where I really didn't get the big change was when mobile phones sort of came into play. And we were being taught what's the purposes of SMS. And I couldn't understand why I would SMS someone when I can just pick up the phone and dial them. And eventually what we sit today, we sit with WhatsApp, which is a very powerful tool where people don't even write words anymore. They just put a couple of emojis, a couple of pictures, and exactly you know what the person's thinking and feeling. So once again, it's that whole unbelievable terrain that you believe that we'll never get to, that we actually do take for granted where we are today. And the last example that I can frown upon is the fact that when Facebook launched in 2004, I didn't for 1 minute believe that Facebook was going to be a business tool that I would actually have to utilize and put into my thinking or strategy. I just thought it was a social connection. And look at it today, it's able to define a market, it's able to position a business, and it very much it is targeted towards driving ads and sales in business spaces. So I think what Will has just highlighted on the 5 Ds is that it's to understand where your business is at, to understand where your customers at, and understand what you would like to achieve with your customer in a sense of a point of difference with that of a cluttered market. I think that first picture that Will showed with the tulips, and there was one red one amongst all the yellow, is exactly the kind of ideology that we're all trying to chase in the sense of how do you stand out from a crowd. And I think this is where there is great examples as to how to think about this, because you don't need to be the biggest, the best, or the loudest. It's about how you can communicate the most exclusive to your target audience. Will, over to you.
Yep, absolutely. There's some great points. You can literally, there's not a million ways, but there's dozens and dozens of ways to differentiate yourself. These are a couple that I found. These are, this is brave marketing, I suppose, in the context of the industry, in the accounting industry. So you've got one option over there, 101 ways to save tax legally. So that's quite an interesting offer. These other ads from an accounting firm I came across on Facebook. The interesting thing about these is that they've nailed the psychology. So they're talking about freeing up time, but freeing up time on its own is not enough. What does that mean? Time is life. Getting your life back to, you get your time back, you get life back. You can do other things with your life, like go surfing or spend time with your children. And that is a common complaint of people, working long hours. They don't get to see their family enough. So they've sort of dialed it in. The other one that a lot of people are familiar with, which is outside the accounting industry, may well be a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. Almost everyone's sort of heard of that book. What it was a book about outsourcing. So, taking the repetitive tasks that you shouldn't be doing and finding someone cheaper to do it for you. What he did was if he put out another book on outsourcing, it was Tim Ferriss, the market would have just yawned. But his big idea was to turn it into the 4-Hour Workweek. It's basically exactly the same stuff as any outsourcing book, and there were dozens, if not hundreds. But he became famous off the back of that big, brave marketing idea. So there's a few to look at. But as I said, bravery comes about in the context of what's happening within your industry and within the clients that you're going after. So I'm now going to pass across to Grant. I'll just make sure I'm on the right slide there. And he's going to share some more things with you.
So when it comes to branding, a lot of people get a little bit confused as to what the purpose of what a brand is all about. And yet at the end of the day, the brand is the memorability of how you get recognized or identified as to the value that you bring. And of course, it's every business's role to educate their target market as to the value that they bring them and the price that they can charge. An example like this, which I try to portray in the sense that Deloitte as an auditing firm didn't get crazy with bells and whistles, but all they did was put a green dot. And the whole point of branding, especially in the digital age, is about getting iconography up and running. And iconography is about less is more. It's about bold shapes and colors. And as you can see down at the bottom, it's a D and a dot, is where they start to build that association, that when you see a D and a dot, that you understand exactly who the organization is and you connect the dots mentally. But that whole dot became a campaign for the organization, in the sense that whatever they were trying to portray in communication, having fun with the brand, having fun with the organization, having fun with the customer, and doing anything that was to do with circular, round, and green, was basically the campaign in which they played in. And what was interesting about Deloitte in their positioning was that even though they were very traditional and very conservative, they still found a playful means of entertaining and edutaining their customers as to the value of who they are, where they are, and what they do, even though they didn't actually have to say all that type of stuff. And that is exactly the mission and the vision of a brand, in the sense of, where do you position it and how many times do you position it with the view to be clever? It's not about being corny or being like silly. It's about being strategic. It's about implementing. It's about being tasteful. If you look at Deloitte, it's a very traditional font. It's a very traditional spacing. And all they had to do was put one green dot, which became the essence of the campaign. And if you look in their digital space, they just have a lot of fun with the green dots. And I think therefore a company like this had a recipe. I like to use the word recipe, that they can't run out of things to do and say or shapes until such time that they feel that everyone's got the dots and it's time to move on. But they've really got lifeblood with a green dot as to what they can move and how they can play forward in their marketplace. Well, if you can hit the next one for me, please. Yep. Here's another example about branding, in the sense that branding doesn't need to be boring. You know, branding is about imagination and color and positioning. And here's a company that I just grabbed. I don't know who this company is, but what they did was they played with the K. And here you can see there are 4 examples of an execution of a K, and with color schemes with the view to create vibrancy, memorability, identification, and positioning. So once again, it's a lot of people have always looked at branding with the view to understand that it is just a badge. It's just something that I have to put at the top of my letterhead or on the side of my door. It's become a lot more than that. It becomes the ethos of what your company and communication style is all about. I've known quite a few of my clients who have gone forward by investing wisely with their branding, to a point that that branding holds a lot of IP that is part of the selling element when they've gone and sold their business later on. So therefore, I think it's about having fun with brands. It's not about being silly or ridiculous, it's about keeping simple with costs and implementation of printing processes. But at the same time, how you unite your team, your organization, and how you unite your customers as to the value that you bring them is what branding is all about, in the sense of the positioning as to what they do and how they do it. So therefore, it's not about less is more. Sometimes it is. It's about how you apply the brand. And that, for me, is the science of where branding is positioned.
I think an interesting point there is it should be fun. It should be human. When you mentioned the Deloitte one, you know, you can do so many things with that. The brand is really the relationship that people have with the business, the bond. And when that's strong, it's so much harder for someone to leave. If that's not strong, it's really easy for them to walk away if they get a better offer.
Yeah, and I think what's also important is to understand who your customer is. You know, you've got to really understand, don't give them something that they don't want, give them something that they do want. So therefore, it's about knowing your customer. Where are they? How do they buy you? How do they identify with you? How do they associate with you? So that eventually that relationship becomes strength, because it's over time that investment in your organization becomes value with the view of a meaningful relationship. Next one there, Will. Here's another great example that I just chose, with the view that everyone knows the software that's rolled out worldwide. And once again, they've just gone with a very, I would call it a digital name, in the sense that it's not the correct spelling, but at the same time, they found a way to just be unique, and that was part of the identification. And at the same time, they went for circular, they created a target, they tried to be on point, they went for simple coloring. Once again, they used a lot of the iconography standards that is now expected in digital space. When I mean digital space, I mean tablets, I mean smartphones, I mean computers with touchscreens. It's all about making sure that things are stronger, bigger, bolder, and less is the recipe of going forward. But what I really enjoyed the most was the fact that they took all the traditional paper and they went and they created artwork with it, with the view to deliver clever ideas and campaigns around being imaginative of what you can do with paper, because now it's an online software. And this recipe is not something that they could run out of. So they had a lot of fun being able to just play with their audience, play with their customer, and just have a little bit of humor attached to it as to where they were able to be a little bit of different to that of the opposition in the marketplace, but at the same time, how they could come forward and not run out of ideas. And whatever was trending or transpiring, they were able to adapt and position their brand accordingly. And as you can see, nothing complicated here. It was just about positioning a brand, having a good headline, and having a bit of fun with some imagery. And this can be used in a digital space, in a print space, in a handout space. And you just literally can just have fun with your brand and being relevant all the time.
Mm. There's another example. I don't know if they're still running it, but for many years, H&R Block ran campaigns, and they had this person in the office who was staying back late, and they were getting like a real kick out of finding another deduction for their client. You know, they're doing the cha-ching thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it was dorky, but it was memorable. That could have been 30 years ago that campaign started. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But it was a simple idea that, you know, they didn't just do your tax return. They got a kick out of like saving you every cent they possibly could. So a brave marketing idea can be really simple.
I think another example that comes to mind is being simple. I know of a gentleman in the UK, a marketer. His name is Jeff Ram, and he was on a trip, and he rocked up at a hotel, and he heard the lady at reception was having a bit of an issue, and he asked what the problem was. And he just got a piece of paper and he scribbled a quick note down, and he said, "How many rooms do you have in the hotel?" And she said, we've got 36 rooms. And he said, all right, just make me 36 copies of this note. And he did, and they crumpled it into a little ball. And he said, I want you to go to every room, and I want you in the hotel to knock on the door, make sure there's no guest inside, open the door, and all that you literally have to do is throw the piece of paper into the room and close the door. Now, you can imagine as a guest going into a hotel that it would be funny if you went in and everything was in place, but there would be a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. And I know for a fact that I would be one of those guys, but most people would. If you walked in and you put your bags down and there was this crumpled piece of paper on the floor, you would be a bit like, why is this piece of paper here? And I know that you'll pick it up and you'll unravel it. And what he wrote on the note was, it said, "Dear guest, welcome to our hotel. If your clothes look like this crumpled piece of paper, please dial 9 for our laundry service." And instantly, they increased their sales by 38% just by being a little bit quirky and a little bit different. So you don't need to do extravagant things. It's about just being a little bit brave, a little bit bold, and a little bit about positioning in the sense of getting people's attention. It's not about quirky or being ridiculous. It's just about having a theory as to the brand and the value as to what you bring your clients. When we look at pulling a strategy together, I always look at following a SMART process. And the reason I put the slide in is that as much as Will was talking about the delivery, I think that delivery is part of where strategy starts and ends. But I think what's important in the sense is the method on how you're going to follow, in the sense of how much do you do it, over what period of time do you do it, and how much do you spend within a particular area. And of course, the M starts for the media, in the sense, what platforms does your target audience or your client get their information on? How do you engage with them? Where would you find them, and who are they and where are they? And this is one of the key things that you now start to get very good analytics as to where it is. So therefore you can really understand what you've got. Another great opportunity that you have with media right now is that if something's not working, you can change it a lot faster than you could back in the days when you used traditional media and you placed your billboard on the side of the road. You weren't able to just be able to pull it down and change your message there and then. So now you can be a lot more effective. I think the A is the most important part of any particular business. And I think if you look at the examples that we've portrayed right now, it's all about being authentic. The customer out there right now are people that are looking for compelling and heartfelt connection. They're looking for people that are sincere. They're looking for people that are real. I think there's a lot of bullshit in the marketplace where people just don't want all this fictitious stuff anymore. And they just want to know that they can talk to someone that's just as human as what they are, with the view that that's got a heart and that's got an emotion. And you'll find that right now, people that are kind to the earth or looking after the earth is a very, very much a key factor. So therefore, being authentic with your communication, being authentic with your brand and where you're positioning is all part of what that strategy is about. But naturally, whenever you're spending money, and I know of lots of customers, and I hate this part in the sense that I hate wasting money. Results are important for the sense of measuring, creating analytics, being progressive, understanding where the measurables are and the demands, and be able to make adjustments according to your authenticity, to the media plan, and to your strategy as to what you're trying to achieve. But like Will was explaining in the sense of the delivery, it all comes down to the buy-in of your team. If your team are not part of the campaign and they're not buying in as to what is important or how is the investment or the message or the campaign all about, that they haven't bought in, then those are the kind of things that you'll find would be quite crucial to the results. So if the phone would ring after a campaign was running and people were not living to the brand standards that you've gone and put out and measured, then you would find that it would be worthless. So it's very much an important factor to make sure that your team are part of the brand, part of the understanding as to what you're trying to do, understanding of the authenticity. And naturally, results is very much about the delivery in the sense of making sure you're talking to the right people at the right time. Another example that I have is a couple of years ago, Amazon is one of the biggest companies in the world today, and it's merely just 20 years old. But it came along and it bought a company in the UK called Whole Foods. And what it did was it bought it for $13.8 billion. And when I give this presentation, and I normally ask a room full of business people, what's wrong with that picture? It is normally the accountants that would pop up and say, well, I think they pay too much for this particular business. And I think you're right. I think they would pay too much. But I think what the point is, that what I think is wrong is that technically Whole Foods was a company that was trading far longer than what Amazon was. And yet Whole Foods didn't understand their customer. They didn't understand what their customers were wanting or how to change and transcend. They were staying the way they always stayed, in the sense of just putting food on a shelf. Amazon realized what their customer wanted, and it was cheaper to pay a high price to buy the opportunity and the means, with the view to be able to deliver an alternative service. And the way that they were a point of difference was you could walk in with your app, take the food off and walk straight out without going to the till. And of course, your credit card would be debited. So those were the kind of means of finding target audience, finding opportunity, finding method as to how do you acquire your customer, which is very much where strategy comes in, the media in the sense of how you communicate, the authenticity as to what the message is, the result in the sense of what you're going to try to get as a return of investment for the money that you spend, and how do you make sure that your team live up to the brand standards and the value that you've got. Will, you want to add anything there?
No, I think what you said there is good. The team element's critical. One thing that I've seen happen a lot in Australia, and it's easy to knock the big banks, but from time to time they realise that actually maybe providing some customer service is a good idea. Who knew? But what they typically do is they put out an ad campaign promising something or saying they've changed, and they actually haven't done the team side of it either at all or done it very well. And there's a massive disconnect. So it just doesn't work without that team element to it. That's probably the only thing that I would have added.
Correct.
Yeah.
Will and Grant, before you go, when you go to the next slide, but there's just a question that's come through just to me personally. So as far as results are concerned, can you give a couple of examples from basically from your profession's point of view about the type of results they can be or should be measuring when they're going down this process?
Yep. I can share one. It's not an accounting example, but in the context of this particular client, that they sell business to business. It's a commercial service, it's a cleaning type service. The brave marketing strategy for them was to actually narrow down and focus on who they most wanted to serve, who they derive the greatest profit from. And I don't want to sort of reveal confidential details, but there was a particular type of customer that would spend about $500K a year on the service. So in the work with them, narrow down on who that was, and then basically just pursued a strategy of direct outreach to them with creative direct mail and phone follow-up. And that process enabled them to bring on an additional 8 clients, which took their turnover from about 1 mil to 5 mil within the space of a year. So it's, it's not rocket science, so to speak, but it was a brave strategy to just do the thinking, to narrow down on the client, and then to execute a strategy to bring those clients on board that proved to be very effective. It's one example that I can share.
Another one that I can interject with is that I once worked on a brand where the gentleman had sold the business for a good price. And just before he left, he wanted to make one more change to the brand, which I duly did. And that was in 2001, and it's still running today. But this brand hasn't changed since I last touched it 20 years ago, and yet it is worth $76 million in the sense of its last audit, in the sense of its value proposition as to the means of how they are perceived or associated and to the target market that they hold. And I think that is an example of where to spend money wisely with the view of where they positioned their brand, how many times they showed that brand, and how they were able to educate the market as to the value that they brought was quite crucial. And I think that entity as an asset is extremely important. Another example that I've got is when people have spent money, and I think that it comes down to different businesses with different strokes, but I think that the recipe is less is more is very important. But the secret to any successful campaign is consistency. I would rather spend less but be on a more consistent basis than I would spend a lot and be in the marketplace for a short period of time. Because at the end of the day, people's memorability doesn't last very long. The marketplace is very noisy. There's lots of competition and there's lots of messages going out. We're as humans can experience up to 4,000 branded messages per day of all brands trying to associate and put value on us. So therefore, I think that the best recipe of return is to make sure that you're not trying to say too many things, less is more, and at the same time, make sure that you can play a long game on a consistent game. And that is very much what digital marketing and branding is all about.
And if you look at that in the context of Australia, very few brands maintain consistency over time. But a good example within Australia is Bunnings, who totally dominate the hardware category for a variety of reasons, one of which is their marketing. So they've had a consistent lowest prices at just the beginning. They've had their price match guarantee. They've essentially kept the same graphics, design, style of their ads. They've been consistent for, I'm not even sure how long now, feels like maybe 20 years. But that consistency has allowed them to dominate. So Woolworths came in with Masters, couldn't compete because Bunnings basically owned the market. So that consistency will serve you very, very well. If you're changing strategy all the time, people can't remember it and they don't engage with it, and you don't get the power that comes from that consistency.
At the same time, with the same example, their recipe was adaptable for the digital space. If you think about Bunnings and 20 years ago, they created the same formula, the same recipe, their adverts all look the same. But when the digital space sort of stepped in and became prominent, they just rolled that over. They were able to adapt that recipe into that particular space and still stay on trend. So therefore, they can't run out of things to say or do or promote, because their recipe allows for that human touch, which builds trust, builds faithfulness, builds brand ambassadors, and at the same time gets them well positioned within locations.
Yep.
This is my favorite graphic of all time, because this is the three things that I get asked on a regular basis when meeting with clients, in the sense that people want it fast, they want it cheap, and they want it great. And as much as that is a perfect space, it doesn't really work very, very well in the marketing and the creative space, in the sense that when it's fast, 9 times out of 10, it is going to be trashy, throw it away, or dipped in ugly sauce. If you want it cheap, it's going to be something that's just a little bit too late. You can have more time to do it a little bit later. And sometimes this object of free, that has never worked when people want a freebie or a favor. It never works. 9 times out of 10, you trash it, you go away, or you try again. So great is a very unique utopia with the view to strive for. And like I said earlier, I think that the recipe to greatness is to maintain the distance, like the example of Bunnings, being consistent in the marketplace with the view to make sure that you're educating, informing, and adding value consistently as to what you are as a business to that of your clients and what is important, and naturally to make sure that your team are supporting and living the brand as to how you've established the campaign to be.
So basically, just to sum up, we've obviously gone through the process of creating brave ideas. We've looked at some examples. We've looked at some of the things you need to think about when implementing them. So at this point, you've got a few different options. One is to keep doing what you're doing. If that's highly successful for you, that's okay. But bear in mind that the needs of the market and the competition can change at a moment's notice. You only need to look at the taxi industry and how quickly Uber came in and knocked that off its feet. So you need to keep your pulse of the market in mind. Second option is just try some of this stuff out for yourself, experiment and see how you go. The third option, if you're interested, Grant and I have made some time available to do an introductory Brave marketing call with you. If you would like to take that up, it's a free call and there's no hard sell pitch from us. We work on the philosophy of helping you and letting the value of our help stand for itself. If you want to have a conversation after that, we can do it. So if you would like to take up the third option, all you need to do is let Darren know through mobile, text, whatever it may be, and he'll connect with us and we'll get that set up for you. So now I'd just like to say thank you and see if there are any questions. The questions thing's missing for some reason. Yeah, throw it open to a few minutes of questions. No such thing as a silly question.
One of the questions that's come in, Will and Grant, is that as far as the 5 Ds are concerned, is it also like with a lot of accountants that come that work with their clients, they identify a current need. In what way can you still apply the same strategy if they're trying to create the need, in the sense of trying to create an additional service for the client, like Facebook created a need and the bottled water created. So what about from the accounting profession point of view?
Yeah, so what is always happening is there's always some desire or need that underlies everything. So you're not actually creating that need, but you're creating a new way of connecting people with that need. So in the case of Facebook, the need was to connect and share and engage socially, and they created a platform for that. So if we look at the client base of an accounting firm, You've got different people. You've got personal, business primarily. The personal clients have a bunch of other needs that are related to finances and wealth generation, insurance. They may want to invest in property. There's a whole variety of things that they need help with, which you could either look at directly fulfilling, or you could partner with other businesses who can fulfill those needs really well, and do that on a mutual referral basis, or if the ethics and things allow that, there may be some sort of remuneration involved. As I said, that depends on the ethics. But if you can find a way to satisfy some of those other needs, and the starting point is always just to ask the clients, hey, we're thinking about introducing some new services. These are a few that sprang to mind. What would you be most interested in having available from Joe's accounting service? And see what your clients tell you. It is really common for them to have things that they want, but they're not forthcoming in telling you. And the risk in not knowing is that they go somewhere else to get that fulfilled, and you sort of go, oh, hang on, well, we offer that. You have to make sure that they know.
I think following that, Will, is that I've always believed in a few philosophies. One is, if you're not in the space of being the inventor, then don't be the inventor. Be the communicator, be the educator. I like the word edutainment. I like to entertain, but I like to educate at the same time. I think what's important is to understand what your customer wants, not what you think they want. As soon as you give them something what you think, you're going to miss the mark. If you're listening to the customer, if you're testing the market before you spend money and put a campaign, you will work out very quickly that's what people are liking, what they're enjoying, and what they're asking for. Once you know what they're asking for, you will know how to adapt your campaign to the answer, to the intrigue, towards the landing page. It's always about generating traffic towards a funnel that eventually you get to know who they are, you get to meet them, and at the same time, you get to understand their needs. Yeah. Like Will was explaining as well, we win business by having conversations. We don't get into hard pitches. I think the same goes for everyone on this call as well. It is about educating them to the value that it is. It's about having a conversation and be able to understand and explain the answers that you've got to the problems that they have. You're there to solve a problem in your client's market space, like we are to our clients. But at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a silly idea. It's all about how you and your team implement, deliver, believe that you have a point of difference, and give them what they want.
One other thing I'll add quickly there is that the relationship that you've got with your clients is critical. And it can't be a relationship based around purely, sort of intellectual elements. It has to be personal. The person has to feel as though you value them. So one of the biggest reasons, it's about 68% of the reason that people leave a business is perceived indifference. They just don't think you care about them. And I see this happen with accountants all the time. You see it in the Facebook groups. Oh, my accountant's not really proactive, or, they'll only talk to me if I'm paying them. All these sort of things. So the relationship is really important. If they don't feel valued, it lowers the barrier to them going somewhere else. If you've got a great relationship with them, which could be as simple as remembering the name of their children or their football team, or, it's amazing, just little things like when you go into your local coffee shop and they know what your order is, that just creates a little bond. That bond is powerful. That's the thing that keeps them with you. Yes, you've got to get them results, but you've got to have the relationship as well.
Great, yeah. And
that's the authentic part.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And as far as a brand is concerned, I mean, so what are the couple hints and tips that you advise those on the line today in relation to what they need to think about when they're coming to a brand? I mean, do they need to engage as part of working with you, focus groups, or test and measure with the sample size with the market or with their clients, with their team members, in order to develop the brand?
Well, the first thing that I would always suggest is to sort of look at what you've been doing, how long you're existing, and to look at what you've done to date and sort of create a scorecard as to how good or bad you feel it is to that of your target audience that you're trying to fit. I'm not a fan of just throwing out the old and inventing the new. I find that all you do is you confuse your customer. I like to be able to tweak. I like to transcend. I like to find quirky little angles that I can do, like the green dot. I love the green dot because my mind cannot run out of green things to implement, to explore a story. We live in the age of digital, and therefore digital brand stories are important. And that's where this whole essence of bravery comes together, in the sense of what can you portray, what can you tell, what can you foretell, in the sense of we as business working in our little workshops need to pay attention to something that you're giving that I'm going to remember, is where that consistent message in digital space becomes essence. And that's why recipe for me is very important. I think it's important to listen to your customers. I think it is important to workshop. And it's also important to evaluate what you've done to date before you just throw it all out and start again.
Yeah, that's right. And really, why the clients to come to you in the first place, and why do the employees work with you as well? So you engage that, I suppose that positive aspect to your business in relation to tweaking or redeveloping your brand.
Look, I hate wasting money, and I hate just throwing things out for the sake of throwing it. If it has no value and has no purpose, then it's gone. But I believe strongly to always utilize what is there or what I could make better, rather than start again. All that you do with starting again is you just confuse the audience. But there's no such thing as non-salvageable opportunities. There are always salvageable opportunities. And just what you thought was a poor example can be turned into a great example. It becomes the essence of your brand story as to how you get your customers to come on the journey with you.
Mm-hmm. It's also, it's an emotional connection. So it's very much about feelings. Sounds touchy-feely, but that's what it is. I mean, you look at Coca-Cola, it's sugar and water and whatever in a can. So you're not bonded with what's in the can, you're bonded with what the can represents to you. Even the American election campaign 2016, Make America Great Again. What a powerful emotional slogan to engage people. Great can be whatever you think it is. So it is engaging people's feelings. Another great example is Apple. That people generally either love or hate Apple. So you kind of think it's silly if you don't like it, but if you do like it, there's something about it. You feel as though it says something about you, you're cooler or something, or more creative as a result of having those products, but it's a feeling. It's not to do with the products themselves.
But at the same time, if you look at Apple, in 1983, Apple was bankrupt, and yet its brand, it hasn't changed that much to what it is. It has the tweak, but it hasn't reinvented itself. But what it did do is that it got its team right, it got its branding right, it's got its packaging right, and it gave a value proposition to what the customer now needed in the sense of what was transitioning. They didn't invent iPads, they just perfected it. And I think that's what's important, is about, you can't be everything to everyone. Work at what you're good at, work at where your niche is, work at where your customer is, because you don't always have to be number one. Number 10 is just as good as number one if that's your choice. And I think that's what I love about my job, is that I work with brands with the view to make them relevant and that they add value to people's lives.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for your time today, William and Grant. As Will and Grant pointed out before, if you want to find out a bit more about how they can help you, there's some details there on the screen. Please contact me and I'll pass on your details to Will and Grant. Hopefully you got a lot out of this session today. If there's no more, I don't think there's any more questions, but if you do have any more questions, please feel free to email me personally at inquiries@yourbusinessfirst.com.au or just send me a text. Thanks again, guys. Much appreciated. Thank you for taking the time, and we look forward to having you again. So thank you very much, everybody who attended, and we'll see you next time in the Accountants Connection webinar series. Take care.
Thank you for the opportunity. We greatly value it. Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, guys.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.